Today on Church Public, cartoons are evil and maybe gay, the Democrats want to redefine marriage again, and a school teacher is put in jail for trespassing after he was put on leave for not wanting to use a student's preferred pronouns. Yes, that sounds crazy, but that is what's going on. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. This is Matt Odegaard, and I really appreciate you tuning in today. We have a lot going on in the news, and I want to help you understand it. We look at current events from a Christian perspective because I want you to follow Jesus and live in the public square, which more and more seems to be difficult to do. It seems like this culture is coming after you, especially if you are a Christian. So I want to help you navigate that in the best way that I possibly can, and we'll look at current events from a Christian perspective, try to explain what's going on, and a little bit about what is coming. Because if you start reading some of these stories and you start seeing the trends, you start understanding that this is going to get a little bit different as we go through time, and maybe worse, not better. But at any rate, it's not a chance to lose hope because we have hope in the Lord, and hope in the Lord will renew our strength, and we need that strength for what is to come. So we don't have to lose hope. We don't have to lose heart. In fact, I would encourage you to have courage because that is what we were made to do. We have a strength from God, not from this crazy, wacky world in which we live, though we are still supposed to live in it. So we can't run and escape from the world entirely, and we can't become like the world. Those are the two sides of this coin that we've got to navigate and stay in the middle on the path, on the way of Jesus Christ, if you are a Christ follower. If not, maybe stay till the end and we'll talk about that a little bit. At any rate, I appreciate you being here today. If you haven't already and you want to, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button and hit the share button if this is helpful and you want to send it to somebody you know that is dealing with issues and trying to figure out, what do I do? What do I think? How do I relate this to the Bible? I want to help you with that, and I want to help them with that. So thanks again for listening. If you are listening on audio, I love you. Thank you. If you want to watch on video, you can go to churchpublic.com/podcast and get this and many other previous episodes. So again, thanks so much. Let's go ahead and get into this. All right. So today, there's a bunch of things going on, a couple of stories that I want to get to, and the first one starts out with some interesting things from Disney again. So unfortunately, Disney is back into my news at least, and we just have to talk about what in the world is going on with them. Their new show is called Little Demon. Yes, Little Demon. That's actually the show that they're putting out. If you are just watching, I'll describe this. I guess it's an intro scene or an intro clip for it. It has the girl in the middle, which apparently is the little demon, who, I don't know, has a third eye hair clip. I'm really not sure what's going on. There's kind of a demon on one side, and then apparently her mother on the other side, which we'll get to in a moment. And then there is the demon world with flying eyeballs and dragons and demons, and then the regular world with people wearing vests and backpacks and then flying. I don't know. There's a lot going on in this picture. Again, if you're not watching, that's about the best that I can describe it for you. But here's the premise. Here's the premise of this great show. Satan impregnates a woman who gives birth to an Antichrist daughter. I didn't even make that up. That's actually what it is. So via the Christian Post, Disney's new FX series called Little Demon, as I mentioned, features a woman who is impregnated by Satan and gives birth to an Antichrist daughter and carries, and that's the premise of the show. The show also contains, apparently, I haven't even watched it. I'm telling you, I haven't watched it. I'm not going to watch it because this is all you need to know. Look at the picture that I showed you. Listen to this description. You don't need to watch it. Anyway, it's a sort of another watch out thing. I hate that I have to do this. And here's the thing. I'm going to have people saying, well, this is an adult cartoon. I'm going to have to push back against that a little bit. If it is a cartoon, period, kids are going to want to watch it. Period, because kids love cartoons. If a kid is scrolling on Disney Plus or whatever show or whatever platform, and you happen to just say, hey, I need a 5-minute break, I need a 2-hour break, I'm not judging, I'm just saying, like, figure out your life. And you give your kid a remote control, and you're like, Disney's fine, Disney's great, there's nothing wrong with Disney, this is on there, and they're going to say, oh, I want to watch a show about little demons. Please, just pay attention to what your kids are watching. Anyway, so this is the Antichrist Daughter, who is the spawn of Satan and a lady. And 13 years later, you have this Antichrist Daughter. Apparently, there's graphic violence and nudity in the cartoon show. Great. And it, quote, makes light of hell and the dangers of the demonic realm, end quote. Agreed. Yes. Continuing on. 13 years after being impregnated by Satan, a reluctant mother, okay, and her Antichrist daughter attempt to live an ordinary life. I don't even know what to say to that. Let's keep going on. The previews and the commercials, according to a watchdog group, say they include such horrific content, it is difficult for families who watch Fox X or whatever this is to avoid evil subject matter completely. So, in other words, even the commercials for this are bad. And according to this watchdog group, Disney is trying to portray witchcraft as a positive tool to fight evil. A positive tool to fight evil. No, it's not. Please don't do witchcraft. Tarot cards, Ouija boards, readings. Don't do it. It's all bad. It's all bad. There's no such thing as white magic. There's no such thing as good magic. There's no such thing as good witches. I know that you've heard that. I told the story before. I'm not going to tell it again, where I ran into a satanic, what did he call himself? A warlock, a satanic warlock. Anyway, I ran into this person and we had a conversation about this. They tried to convince me that Satan was good. Anyway, I'm not getting into that story again. The point is this. They were trying to convince me that Satan's actually the good one and Jesus is the one that's been deceiving everybody. So again, opposite day. That's not real. That's not what it is. There's no good magic. There's no white magic. There's no fighting magic with magic. It's all bad. Don't do it. Isaiah 8:19. When someone tells you to consult mediums, spiritists who whisper and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God? As Isaiah the prophet says. Again, this is it. Should not the people inquire of their God? Again, don't go to witches, witchcraft, mediums, psychics, blah, 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 whatever, tarot cards. Go to God. Isaiah continues on. Why consult the dead on behalf of the living? Great question, Isaiah. Let's continue. Verse 20. Consult God's instruction and the testimony of warning. If anyone does not speak according to this word, God's word, they have no light of dawn. Again, according to Isaiah, not just me, there's no white magic. There's no good magic. There's no white witches. There's no good witches. It's all bad. Continuing on in Isaiah, distressed and hungry, they will roam the land. When they are famished, they will become enraged, and looking upward will curse their king and their God. They will look toward the earth and see only distress, darkness, and gloom. They will be thrust into utter darkness. You don't want to deal with beings like this. Again, I'm going to go ahead and say, you don't have to worry about this, because if you have Jesus, there is no other force, no spirit, no principality that is higher than God. But if you dabble in this stuff, if you dive straight into this stuff, you're going to reap consequences of dealing with this stuff. And I'm just trying to help you avoid this kind of shenanigans. Just please don't. And we'll continue on. Instead, believers are instructed to call on God. Deuteronomy 18:10. Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in a fire, or who practices divination, sorcery, omens, engages in witchcraft, casts spells, medium, spiritist, etc., 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 etc. This is the thing. Just don't do it, okay? Just don't do it. It's not worth it. There's your warning. I probably went overboard on it, but it's serious stuff, and we want to be serious and a serious people. So let's pay attention to what this world is trying to sell, not only us. This is why I bring this stuff up, because it's not just about us. This is about your kids. If you're the parent of your kids, watch out. Watch what they're watching. Pay attention. Don't let this happen. All right. Let's continue on in cartoon world, because apparently that is real life now. Peppa Pig, which I've also never watched, and I think I'm proud of that. I think I'm proud of the fact that I've never watched Peppa Pig. It's apparently a British cartoon about a pig and a pig family. Again, I don't really care, but this show, I think I have it here, is so insanely popular. It has been translated in, I think I had it here, it's something like 40 languages and 180 countries. So Again, you can judge me for never having watched it. I don't care. But millions of people have watched this. So this is why this story is important. According to NBC News, Peppa Pig is making headlines for introducing a same-sex couple. For years and years and years, it has just been the pig, the pig's family, and the pig's friends. Now we have 2 lesbian polar bears because you need lesbian polar bears in a kid's cartoon. Lord have mercy. So, per NBC News, Penny the polar bear tells the character Peppa that she has 2 mummies and draws a picture of herself holding hands with them. The polar bear, Penny the polar bear, there's way too much alliteration in this. Penny the polar bear tells Peppa the pig, there's a tongue twister for you. Penny the polar bear tells Peppa the pig, man, I can't do it. Anyway, that I live with my mummy and my other mummy. One mummy is a doctor and one mummy cooks spaghetti. I love spaghetti. Okay, continuing on. In this article from NBC, the cartoon is of British origin and it is extremely popular. This was the stat that I had a little bit ago. NBC News reported that it has been translated into 40 languages and broadcast in 180 countries, and apparently also has a large fan base in the United States. The pig is 4 years old, and it has focused on this pig, Peppa's, life with Mummy Pig and Daddy Pig and younger brother George. So, here's the problem, apparently, and why we now have polar bear, gay polar bears, I don't know what to say here, lesbian polar bears, whatever. Here's the problem, and apparently what we have. Critics have taken issue that the cartoon glorifies a traditional nuclear family. So, according to NBC News, this led to the creation of a petition in 2019 that demanded series creators add same-sex couples. It has 23,000 signatures. I'm just going to leave it at that and keep going. So, the petition says, quote, despite there being 6 series and 250 episodes so far, none of the families feature same-sex parents. It continues on. Children watching Peppa Pig are at an impressionable age. I have to pause right there. Yes, they are. Children watching cartoons are at an impressionable age. Let's show them family-friendly stuff instead of this LGBTQAAIP #++ ideology. Continuing on, the quote from the petition. Again, the petition to include same-sex in this cartoon. Excluding same-sex families will teach them that only families with either a single parent or 2 parents of different sexes are normal, it says. This means that children of the same-sex parents may feel alienated by Peppa Pig, and other children may be more likely to bully them simply through ignorance. And by the way, let's pause there for a moment. I literally have no idea what mental gymnastics are happening here. How do you bully someone through ignorance? I feel like, and go with me for a second here, if you were bullied, if you were on the playground, if you were somewhere, and you felt bad about yourself for some reason, would you want a ton of attention on that? Or would you rather have someone ignore you and not pay attention to you? I mean, I probably am crazy for thinking this, but it seems like most of the bullying situations that I've heard about, seen, experienced in my entire life have been because someone was coming at me with something I didn't want. Ignoring people seems better than that. Again, I'm probably crazy on that. Let's keep going. So, I think we just have to wrap this up and say, again, biblically, spiritually, biologically, marriage is between a man and a woman. Because, spiritually, biologically, really, men and women are different. I know that is controversial to say, but it is true. Men and women are different. Therefore, relationships with people other than one man and one woman are not marriage, and that's not family. You can try, as many people are doing, to redefine marriage and redefine family as something else. But the problem is, once you include anything else besides one man and one woman in a marriage, then it is no longer a marriage. It just becomes whatever you want. Again, go with me on this, because if one man and one man is a marriage? Why isn't one man and one man and one man a marriage? 3 men. And the answer is, it is. I brought you a story about that in California. Apparently it's called a throuple, where 3 men are married. Or why isn't one man and one man and a child marriage? Yes, you can go, oh, that's terrible. That would never happen. Why? What is the limiting principle here? And the answer is there is no limiting principle, because once you undefine what marriage actually is defined as, it can be whatever you want it to be. And that becomes a problem, definitionally. And then I have to say as well, you actually need a man and a woman to have a family. That's just biology. It's just reality, much less spirituality and biblical living, started in Genesis, affirmed by Jesus in Matthew 19. You just need a man and a woman to have a family. That's just the reality of it, and the reality that we have to keep coming back to, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So we have to keep saying the truth, even when it is uncomfortable and unwanted in this culture. So, speaking of marriage, the Democrat-sponsored Respect for Marriage Act does nothing of the sort. Respect for marriage, that is. So this one comes from World Magazine. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, might force a vote on the redefinition of marriage by attaching this Respect for Marriage Act to a funding bill. In other words, there's a big budget bill, and in the budget bill, which is budgeting for numbers and stuff, they're going to put in this Respect for Marriage Act. So, budget bill, also same-sex marriage. If that makes sense to you, I got nothing. At any rate, apparently this may be coming. If this Respect for Marriage Act, which did pass the House in July, we talked about that, if this does become law, it would make same-sex marriage federal policy. Now, just to back up and jump in here again, Obergefell decision functionally did that. But this would make it more in terms of policy and legislation if in the course of events Obergefell goes away, which it probably won't, because even though there are some members, Thomas especially, on the Supreme Court, it's very unlikely that they'll vote on anything like this. But the problem here is, including this act will expand the definition of marriage, which I just mentioned, which is a big problem. Because what is the limiting principle on marriage? If it isn't one man and one woman, as the Bible says, as basic human history has said for a long, long time, and biology says how you build a family, one man, one woman equals baby. If it's not that, then what is the limiting principle? And again, I mentioned, I don't think there is one. And we're seeing that. We're seeing it play out in real time. And people will say, well, no, it doesn't really mean polygamy. Why? Why does it not mean polygamy? And it couldn't really mean, like, other things. I'm not even going to get to the weird degradations that this can go down, because ultimately there's no limit to how far degraded this can go, because there's no limit to this at all. So let's instead talk about religious liberty. Why? Why is this dangerous to religious liberty? From World Magazine first. The respect for marriage would increase the threat of legal risk for those who decline to affirm same-sex marriage. For instance, what I just said a minute ago could land me in jail or worse. I don't know. The First Amendment would not cover that, because now it's hate speech because it's against this Respect for Marriage Act. In other words, I would not be respecting marriage according to this act, so I could be held on legal charges. So if you're listening to this, erase this whole thing and throw it out the window. At any rate, that is a functional danger, as we'll see in another story in Ireland in a moment. But before the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage in the Obergefell decision, people believed marriage is a relationship between one man and one woman, and they were targets for politically motivated litigation. For instance, the florist in Washington, the fire chief in Georgia, Jack Phillips, you've probably heard, the baker in Colorado. There have been many of these stories, wedding photographers, wedding florists, that were persecuted because they would not give their services to a same-sex couple, and specifically their creative services. So are you allowed to be creative and to do creative things and not serve certain people? The left would say, no, you have to serve everybody, and especially you have to serve the LGBT community. So Samuel Alito, in his dissent on the Obergefell decision said, quote, "This may be used to vilify Americans who are unwilling to assent to the new orthodoxy, and those who disagree, quote, will risk being labeled bigots and treated as such by governments, employers, and schools." I agree with him. That seems like the direction, seems like the direction that we're going. It's possible that his predictions have perhaps come true now. As we mentioned, this is according to World Magazine again. Dozens of wedding vendors, business owners, religious universities, adoption agencies, and churches have faced lawsuits already because of their sincerely held beliefs, specifically on this same-sex marriage. Activists have weaponized, activists have weaponized non-discrimination and public accommodation laws and policies to intimidate and coerce those who believe in a biblical definition of marriage. If the Respect for Marriage Act becomes law, government coercion and prosecution of those who disagree will get a major boost. Yeah, that seems the direction that this is going. Secondly, according to this article, the Respect for Marriage Act would threaten the tax-exempt status of religious organizations. So that includes nonprofits, but it also includes churches. Most churches, are labeled as nonprofit organizations, tax-exempt. So here's an easy scenario. What if a same-sex couple comes to your church and says, "You must marry us," and you say, "No, this is against our biblical belief"? They could then pursue legal means against you as a church because you have not respected marriage according to this Respect for Marriage Act. Or at the very least, the government could take tax-exempt status away, if not worse. This is functionally, potentially, a big problem for nonprofit organizations, including churches. Third, the Respect for Marriage Act would run roughshod over the basic principles of federalism by forcing definitions of marriage upon American people they did not choose for themselves, says World Magazine. Every state, here is a really important point. So hear this point. Every state would have to recognize every other state's definition of marriage. And the federal government would have to recognize whatever definition of marriage any state adopts. Okay, so this is built into the act, and we have to spend a moment talking about this because this is an important thing that I haven't heard a lot of people talking about, so we have to talk about it. In this act is a clause that, because you can say, well, polygamy, well, pedophilia, other things, they wouldn't happen because it's not in this act. Well, but what if one state decides to say polygamy is okay? Then, according to this act, every other state in the federal system would have to also say that it's okay. That's the way this is written. Polygamy, polyamory, worse. If one state goes along with this, all of the states go along with this. So you see how dangerous that is. If one of the radical states that might be on the West Coast and the southern half of the country, if that particular radical state does something crazy like make a law for one of these different marital lifestyles, then every other state would also have to honor that. That is what is in this bill. That is why we need to go against this bill in whatever voting way that we can. And that's why voting matters. That's why politics matter at the local and the federal level. All right. So speaking of going to jail, this story is kind of weird, but it's about an Irish teacher that is, I believe, currently still in jail for, it's a little convoluted. So it's not for not using a pronoun. It's for saying he would not use pronouns, then getting suspended, and then something like trespassing, right? He went to jail for trespassing. But the end result is the same. The end result is he said, "I will not use these pronouns." They said, "Don't come to work." He did, so they put him in jail. So this is a story according to the New York Post. A teacher in Ireland has been suspended from work and then jailed for contempt of court after he refused to use the correct pronouns to address a transgender student. Enoch Burke, I think I have a picture because you got to see this picture. This is great. This guy in the middle. Again, if you're not watching, yeah, he's the most normal looking person imaginable and very dangerous. And that is hyperbole and sarcasm. He does not look dangerous at all. At any rate, Enoch Burke was arrested on Monday for violating and this was a week ago Monday, for violating a court order barring him from teaching at Wilson Hospital School in Westmeath or even being present there. The news site RTE RTE.IE reported. Judge Michael Quinn found Burke guilty of violating an order made by the High Court last week and sent him to Mountjoy Prison, where he will remain until either he purges his contempt the court gives, or the court gives further orders. In other words, he's being held in contempt of court because he went to school after they told him not to school when he said, I'm not going to use those pronouns, and he's going to stay in court. It seems like forever. I don't know. They haven't gotten to the bottom of this, which is a problem. Let's continue on in this article, and then we'll talk a little more about it. This teacher remained defiant in the face of jail time, telling the judge that it is insanity he would be led out of the courtroom and taken to prison for refusing to give up his Christian beliefs. And I would say, I agree. He said, quote, I love my school with its motto, res non verba, in Latin, which is actions, not words. So that's good. He said, but I'm here today because I said I would not call a boy a girl. Good on you. All right. It continues on. The scandal surrounding Burke began unfolding after the educator who teaches history, politics, and German. By the way, nice job. I like all of those. I'm not very good at German, but history, politics, that's kind of my jam. And at any rate, he refused to address a transitioning student as they instead of he. His stance prompted school officials to place him on paid administrative leave, but the teacher refused to stay away, going to school, attempting to teach, so he was issued an order for arrest, found sitting in an empty classroom at the school. He was taken into custody at the school on Monday, and then taken directly to court, where he told the judge he could not comply with the injunction because it would violate his conscience. He said, I am a teacher. I don't want to go to prison. I want to be in my classroom today. That's where I was this morning when I was arrested. And he ended with, transgenderism is against my Christian belief. It is contrary to scriptures, contrary to the ethos of the Church of Ireland and my school. There's so much in this statement. Transgenderism is against the Christian belief because a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And to think that you are in the wrong body is to think that God made a mistake, and God does not make mistakes. Yes, we have brokenness. We need to deal with that. There's sin in all of us. We need to deal with that. But to think that the answer to that sin is to physically change your body, to chemically change your body, especially into an alternate gender, is not an answer that will provide joy, hope, happiness, peace. There is no way that it can, because those things don't come from what you look like. They cannot. That's just the reality of the kingdom that we are in. And don't forget, that kingdom is God's kingdom. He goes, it is contrary to the scriptures, which I've said over and over again. We'll talk about a little more in a moment. And it's interesting that he even says it's contrary to the ethos of the Church of Ireland. The Church of Ireland. Ireland has a church, and yet the state says you can't do this, and that you have to affirm someone's gender, whatever they believe that is, and how fickle that is, and whatever they believe it is on that particular day. This is the problem that we're running into, and why things like this Respect for Marriage Act is dangerous, because it could get very easily to this thing in Ireland, where if you don't say the right pronouns, if you don't serve someone because they want to be served regardless of their gender, then you are labeled hateful, guilty of a hate crime, and literally sent off to prison. You say, no, that's Ireland. It can never happen like this in America. I hope you don't think that way, because I've shown you even today a couple of examples where a cake baker, pizza maker, photographer, they all had legal issues because they would not go against their Christian beliefs. This is going to become more of a problem, not less. I mean, unless some miracle reformation and revival happens, which God willing it does, just doesn't seem like it's headed that way at this particular time. So let's go ahead and get to our verse of the day, because good Lord, I know I need it. This verse of the day is, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. Romans 12:2. What a good word that is, and my goodness, do we need it these days. Don't let this culture dictate who you are, what your mind is, what you think about. Instead, be transformed by who God is in you. That's the only way to be. It's the only thing that can bring peace and happiness and hope to you. This world's not going to do it. Physical alterations to your body are not going to do it. Chemical alterations to your body, it's not going to do it. It's not going to bring you happiness. It's not going to bring you hope. It's not going to bring you peace. And I don't say that in a degrading way. I'm sorry if you're struggling with these things. I really am. But you must deal with them in a way that is actually helpful, not harmful. That's my goal. That's my hope. That's why I hope that you seek after Jesus with your heart and soul and mind and strength. If you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to do it, grab your Bible, start reading John, start reading First John. I know they both have John in them, but they're both really good. Or read Luke and Acts and read about the life of Jesus and the life of the early church. Those are great places to start. If not, just start reading anywhere. If you want a challenge, read Romans or read Hebrews. A lot of challenging stuff in there for sure. But we need it. We need to read it. We need to live it. We need to love it. And we need to follow after God with everything that we have, because that's the only chance that we have, the only chance that this world has. Thank you for listening to Church Public. I'm Matt Odegaard, and as always, keep the faith.